Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
Greetings, gentlemen. Welcome to yet again another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. I am your host, Scot McKay, at Scot McKay on just about every social media outlet out there. I've been telling you guys for a while now that we're revamping the YouTube channel. Go there and check out quick 1 to 2 minute hits on, well, reframing all of the most frequently asked dating advice questions. I think you guys are going to like what you hear. And if you do, please subscribe and tell a friend. If you haven't been to the website lately, it's mountaintoppodcast.com. I'm always adding new things there, new exciting things for you to download for free, adding value to you guys. And I tell you this all the time too, gentlemen, but if you're not on the Mountaintop Summit Facebook group yet, go join it, and you'll find a bunch of like-minded guys. You'll feel like you found your tribe sort of there. And that I can promise you. That's at the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. With me today is a returning guest. Her name is Susan Winter. She kind of splits her time between New York City, Manhattan to be exact, and rural southern Arizona, which is just, God's country. It's a beautiful place. It is winter time as we're recording this, so surprise, surprise, she's in Arizona. And what I love about Susan Winter is she thinks about dating advice, relationship tips, in a decidedly scientific, sociologically sound way. She gets into the nitty-gritty and really studies what's going on with people. And I invited her back onto the show to talk about whatever topic she chose. And the one that she suggested is indeed fantastic. So without anything further, Susan, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Scott, so nice to talk to you again. I always have a great time in our conversations. Thank you so much.
Well, you're quite welcome. And thank you for being so gracious. You and I often think alike on things because, well, let's just call a spade a spade. You and I know what works. You and I know how men and women attract each other. And, there's a right way of doing things and a wrong way of doing things, right?
Well, I think we are both aware of human nature, and that takes over. I mean, when you understand human nature and you understand patterns, you can pretty much predict outcomes, and therefore you can offer some advice that's going to be helpful.
Right, exactly. So, all of this hand-me-down advice where it's like, oh, you have to wait 3 days to call a woman or you'll look needy, or power her up, as quickly as possible to get her comfortable with your physical touch, or you'll land in the just be friend zone. You and I both mutually roll our eyes at that sort of thing, which is what I really appreciate and respect about you.
Thank you, Scott.
I bet these guys are waiting with bated breath to figure out what this great topic you came up with is, although I'm sure they also read the title of this podcast before they proceeded. But it's going to be a little deeper than even the title we chose, which is the dating world out to get you? Now, Susan, there are pessimists out there. There are the red-pilled guys, the men going their own way, angry feminists, the chicks who've read The Rules, that old book from like 20 years ago. Pickup artist guys who are still trying to make that work for them, even though everybody's onto them.
That's true.
This goes a little bit above and beyond that. There really are pitfalls out there that if you really want to succeed and find someone you find attractive and is attractive back to you, you're really going to have to figure out how to get wise and avoid them, right?
I think, I've had a mantra this year, and it is filter, 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 filter. I mean, because
so you don't work for Lucky Strike or Camel is what you're saying.
No, I don't. Because when I start to think of what is the easiest way that I can get people to get the love that they want, because we all want to have a civil, kind, warm, healthy interaction with somebody that cares about us. And we are in 2 decades of really horrific behavior, uncivil, just horrible. The way people treat each other, there's a lack of politeness, a lack of human kindness, and everybody that's hurt will hurt somebody else. And then on top of that, we've got 2 generations of people not knowing how to express themselves. It's, as I look at the dating world, I keep thinking, how can somebody who would want to entertain the possibility of having a connection, physical, romantic, emotional with somebody, go about getting that in today's world and not get burned, disillusioned, hurt, cynical. It's almost inconceivable. So you have to filter. You have to begin to know what you want and be very clear on the games that are out there. Even if you don't want to play a game, you've got to at least be aware of the games.
Well, I'll tell you what, before we jump into the brouhaha about what all those games are and the pitfalls we indeed need to avoid, you mentioned that things have pretty much been on the downslide as far as men and women relating to each other and the quality of relationships we have with each other for about 20 years now. What do you think went on there? How did we get to this point? Give me your hot take on that.
Well, I think being straight up and honest looked boring. By the time the 21st century came about, people are like, okay, we don't want rules and roles. We don't want these fake, inauthentic relationships where we've got a guy that pretends to be the good husband, but he's actually cheating on the side because he doesn't dare tell his wife that he wants to do things that she won't do with him. Just the falseness of people having transactional relationships or people having looking good relationships. And the thing that I enjoyed is the movement, the evolution of society said, we have a lot of dimensions of gray. It's not black and white. We're not cardboard cutout, cookie cutter, playing a role with each other. And how do I find my authenticity and really be myself? But when the younger generation, the millennials, broke up the mold of traditional relationships and what is expected behavior in courtship, civil, predictable behavior, that was a good thing, except like any revolution, they didn't think about, oh, we didn't make an infrastructure to catch all these pieces that have just been scattered like debris.
We didn't replace it with anything.
Exactly. It's like where they kill off everybody, like, okay, they're gone. Then we look at each other and go, oh, wait, well, we don't know what we're doing either. So they hobbled together, hookups, friends with benefits. And then all the games came about. So the guys were like trying to be a little smooth. And a very simple thing from pickup artists, how do you communicate with women? How do you open a two-set? How do you feel comfortable approaching a woman? Well, we'll teach you the dance steps. And if they do this, you do this. And so there were training technologies, and that worked pretty well for guys for about 6 or 7 years until women started catching on to the patterns and beating them at it. And then you had women having increasingly bad behavior, assuming that the man's going to screw them over. So they're going to dump them first and lie to them. I can't tell you how many times I have gone to a private party and stone cold sober been drawn into a bathroom where a bunch of guys are blowing coke and telling me stories about the horrific dating that they have experienced. And while they are really cool to the outside world and have everything you think a man would want to have in order to attract women, they were mortally wounded by this stuff. Kind of seeing the underbelly of the reactivity of how women had adjusted themselves mentally and emotionally to the pickup artists. And so the whole thing was crumbling down around all of us. And as I stayed in the work, I kept trying to provide basic milestones and markers of sanity and healthy discussions and what do you want and I want this, and just making it easier for people to have a real relationship. But concurrently, you had online dating, which is also a minefield that has become quite lucrative to many people, not only the dating apps, but the people on it who are not there to find love. They are there to fleece you, destroy your faith in humanity, or just lead you on for some reason that is an ego hit for themselves.
So right now, we're getting into the real truth of the matter of the topic we're discussing today, which are the actual practical ways that the dating world may really be out to get us. You mentioned several things there. First of all, the pickup artist era may have been the proverbial moment the music died. I don't want to say the day the music died because it took several years,
It was a shift.
Right.
Sure.
It was a shift. There were the haves and have-nots always in the dating world. I mean, if you were good with women, if your dad or your older brother showed you the ropes, you had a head start. The rest of us basically had to watch from afar, wishing we could be a part of that. And the longer it took us to finally have our first sexual experience with a woman, the more it felt like it was all too good to be true. And pornography back then involved raiding your friend's dad's stash of Hustler magazines and going, oh my God, she's pink inside. I mean, that all sounds so innocent now.
I was just thinking the same word. There was an innocence to it. I know.
Larry Flint as an innocent, huh?
Well, but you
go
can't.
Figure.
Time marches on and you can't unsee things. When mores loosen, they don't tighten back up. It's hard to do that. But you're right. It's like, I think back in the, 40s, 50s, and 60s, still today, they have these dance schools called Arthur Murray. And I remember my parents would say that they would go to, dancing was popular as a social interaction. And they would go and watch couples mouthing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they could tell that they had been taught by rote. And that's what happened with pickup artists or, a lot of the different groups that spun off after that. And I actually knew one of the founding members. I'm telling you, this was the weirdest 4-hour date. I thought, wow, he likes everything I like. He was picking my brain. I had no idea. But, I wasn't against it. It's only if it was used for malicious purposes. I mean, people are fragile enough emotionally. You can't just go mucking about with them and try and destroy them for pleasure. I mean, that's unethical on every level. But we do want to be able to present ourselves confidently. And we do want to know how to be able to filter and catch what is not right for us, not have a wastage of our time and emotional discomfort and heartache.
Wastage. I like that word. I'm going to steal it. You know what? One of the things you just mentioned, again, was how the pickup artist movement came along with the advent of the internet, of course. Now, these guys weren't sitting at home wondering what to do in lonely silence. They now had a community of like-minded guys, an echo chamber, if you will, of guys who said, hey, you know what? You're not alone. We're all in this together. And then they began to feel like everybody was like them, insofar as it usually goes with echo chambers, right? And as you were talking, it occurred to me to kind of phrase it as this was right-brained social skill for left-brained guys is what it really was.
They were
painting
the
by
10
numbers.
steps.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which, of course, can have disastrous results when you go out on a date, pick up your handbook and go, all right, I'm supposed to say this right now. Mm-hmm. And then she says something that corresponds and you do a little happy dance inside your brain and go, oh, okay, now I can go to step B. But, of course, we as humans are all unique creatures. And invariably, there was a point where those guys were painting by numbers instead of being true artists.
I know.
Would go, oh, man, what do I do next? And they were stuck. And that was the downfall of the pickup artist movement as I saw it. Then came the Me Too era, and some guys who were involved with the pickup artist movement behaving badly, even going to a sorority house and killing people. And the next thing you know, it wasn't cool to be a pickup artist anymore. And those guys who had been a part of that either, they somehow already found themselves in a relationship and got married and made babies. You and I were talking about how most of the guys who were the quote unquote gurus in the pickup artist area have now moved on to that lifestyle for themselves by now, perhaps
Absolutely.
Ironically.
Yep.
But, a lot of those guys just decided I'm going to get angry at these women for being angry at me. And those guys decided to, quote, go their own way. The men go their own way. Although they don't, Susan. They just keep talking about women because they're bitter.
The mug job guys, I know because I dated one. He said that's what he was. I'm like, why are you dating me? I'm like the
what
worst
are you doing
person.
Here?
Why? I'm the worst person you should be dating because I know all your moves. And I used to call him on it. Like the first time I went out with this man, he put his hand, we're talking casually, and he puts his hand on the middle of my thigh. And I just looked at it and I said, really? Really? That's your first move. That's your opening move. You go from 0 to like 99, right? Real. And I started laughing. And I said, good God, what school did you go to? I mean, we just started laughing hysterically.
It's not old school. I'll tell you that.
That's right. And it's not suave school either. No. I know.
Well, I mean, we talk about those guys all the time around here and have a good laugh. And I'm sure it's obvious to everybody they don't like me. They don't like my lifestyle. They wish I didn't exist because I do have a woman who loves me and I love her. And they call me a unicorn and all this crazy stuff. But, let's go way back for a second. The 80s and the 90s were kind of an era together that was all about getting some, looking out for number one, greed. building up wealth, building up personal power, conspicuous consumption, all those things. And I think it's not a coincidence that people became more selfish when it comes to relationships. What can I get from this other person? Instead of it being a partnership. And for millennia, Susan, of course, men and women have been designed to be in partnership. And then all of a sudden, over the last 30, 40 years, as you astutely mentioned, this has been kind of a boiling of the frog, right?
Yeah.
Proverbially. All of a sudden, men and women are adversarial. What happened there? Was it really the selfishness, or was it the distance created by the advent of the internet and then dating sites, then apps, then social media, where people weren't even really talking to real people anymore, and the angry people grabbed the mic, and we start thinking that those echo chambers really do represent everybody? Or what do you think? I mean, I just threw a lot of spaghetti against the wall, but
no, you're absolutely right. So we have women's independence and the female revolution, where we thought, oh my goodness, well, we don't need to wear an apron and make babies all the time. Maybe we have more options. And then again, so the effect caused discomfort in the men. Now they had to find their reality. What's my new reality now that you've torn apart the existing reality? So we have the pendulum swinging back and forth between both genders. And, so we have pickup artists, then you have women that are really smart on game and are going to spank a man before he even does anything to them.
Well, he might like that.
Right. Maybe
I'm a little turned on just, hearing about it.
And then, so it's going back and forth as we're trying to evolve into our greater selves, our more complete selves as an individual, and then en masse as a group. Every time the pendulum swings, it is in an effort to correct something that was missing or out of alignment in the past. But as it swings, it knocks over a lot of people. And then people say, hey, you swung too far. And then they push it back the other direction. What we're looking for is it's happening in politics. What we're looking for is to stop the extreme back and forth and to try to find our way to each other again with whatever skills we've amassed. And I hope that's authenticity, honest communication, these radical ideas like, oh my God, I don't play a game. I actually say what I think and feel. It's a great foundation to begin something healthy.
Well, you know what? The people who aren't complaining about how hard it is to date or how weird men or women are out there nowadays, they're not making any noise. They're just going on with their lives. There's men and women just relating happily out there, so you don't ever hear from them.
Well, you've got people that are living their lives. People get married every day. People partner every day, live together every day. That's happening. They find their way to each other. But in the last 20 years, I feel so badly for anybody who has been out and dating. They don't know what a relationship is like. They may not have even had a girlfriend or a partner, because getting to partnership is now like climbing the Himalayas. My God, it used to be routine. Like in my time period, you had to really struggle to avoid marriage. Now you've got to work like hell to try and get one.
All right, well, I'll stay off your lawn, Susan. In my day.
No, but I mean,
but you're right.
It's getting into a relationship, solidifying it, and having something worth keeping is becoming a daunting task, because there has been it's like people went brain dead.
Oh, for sure, especially post-COVID, by the way.
I think, well, humans are not interacting as much directly because of technology. When you have people that are far more comfortable to send a text and an emoji, I had to, with one client, become emoji proficient. Like you speak fluent Spanish, I had to become fluent in emojis.
It's like learning another language.
Because if her guy did one kissy face and one blowy kiss, it was completely different than two and something else. And then that meant he's having a feeling, but of course he's not saying the feeling. I was like, oh my God, is this what you're all doing today? So
it's out to get us, I tell you.
Well, the way it's twisted us has gotten us so off of our center that it's hard to find your way back. And then how do we meet today? Online. And that's another aspect.
Well, it's not real socialization. It's ersatz socialization through this digital interface. Yet I have seen lots of media out there, and I've talked about this on this show already, Susan, so we need not really get into it, but just as an acknowledgement, there are people out there who are making the assumption publicly that the only way to find someone is online.
Well, it's where most people are because they don't leave their house. They're lazy and they're tired and they're self-involved and it's exhausting. And quite honestly, if you're a man, it can be very expensive.
For sure. Oh, yeah. I want to acknowledge something you said before we move on to the technology, because I think that is definitely a huge slice of the pie here relative to this conversation about how the dating world is out to get us. But you mentioned something about men and women not trusting each other, kind of going out and not knowing how to relate. Susan, I can't believe the sheer percentage of human beings who just don't like the other gender they're trying to attract. I mean, women can't stand men, and a lot of these guys think, honestly, women are good for nothing in this life other than to be a life support system for a vagina. And yet these people are expecting to somehow trick or coerce someone. Right. And they call that attraction. And it's really,
aren't I attractive to you?
Hey, here's a word to coin. It's kind of a sniglet. Attriction.
Attriction.
We're going to trick her. Yeah.
I like that.
How could that have never been thought of yet, right?
No, you just did. Brilliant.
Yeah, there you go. I'm good for something other than sex. Go figure.
Yeah.
And I'm not even a woman. All right. So here you get HD porn for free. So guys can have, well, an albeit voyeuristic experience with women who, in their own estimation, are 5 or 10 times more attractive than they're ever going to get in real life anyway. And when they're sick of her after 10 minutes, they can move on to another one. So why even have a real relationship? So the whole thing is just fraught. I mean, porn is just one way technology tricks us into thinking differently about relationships and even about each other than we ever have. But one of the really fascinating concepts you brought up before we hit record on this show was how we all are getting tricked by people who are a few chess moves ahead of us using technology. And I think we should camp on that for a while. The first one that comes to mind for me is, well, here's two of them, and I'll let you just riff on these as you will for as long as you'd like after I drop them on the table. The first one is the online dating companies themselves have figured out how to keep people engaged without losing the business to something awful like, say, God forbid, a relationship having formed. Second of all, the scammers are more sophisticated than we can even imagine nowadays, and people who never have been scammed in their entire lives are falling for it. So what's your take on all that?
Well, you're right. Dating apps, they really don't want you to find somebody because they would be out of business.
Not anymore.
And they put these beautiful bots in front like those are actually people you're going to meet. No, they're not there. But here's the funny thing is people do find each other on an app. I know people, you know people, we all know somebody who found a partner on an app. So I tell my clients to look at it like a condiment. It's not your main meal. It's more like the tomato sauce or the pickles on the side. You use it in addition to in real life. But people have become, pretty uncomfortable with dealing with people in real life. Generationally, right? So, and as you said, COVID didn't help too much. So we are lacking the skills of communication. We are lacking confidence in meeting each other in real life. And so therefore, we're being funneled into these dating apps that will do it for us. And it's like shopping. It's fun. I call it window shopping. Oh, this looks good. I think I'll chat this one up for a while. No, bored. And it hurts to be discarded on an app. And there's ghosting and people start chatting. Like the number one complaint from girls, and I'm sure guys get the same thing. They chatted me up. They sounded so interesting. I was hoping that we'd meet, and then boom, like gone, just gone.
Years ago now, Da-Woon Kang from Coffee Meets Bagel was on here, and she said they ran a poll with their audience. And by far, the number one complaint was ghosting.
Yeah.
90-some%. And then 90-some% of the same people, wait for it, admitted they do it.
Yeah, I know.
That was years ago. It's gotten worse since then.
You know, and I know, working with clients, the people who come off right away and say, look, I hate games. They're the ones that are playing the games. They don't even know it.
No self-awareness whatsoever.
Yeah. So now look at all the bad behavior. God, I can't tell you I've made an entire category called dating games. I can't tell you how many videos are in my playlist. I mean, hundreds. And each new term that rolls out each week for the bad behavior that basically is the consequence of people not being comfortable communicating what's happening. Like instead of saying, hey, I'm not into this, it's just leave. And it's become normalized. So this bad dating behavior is now pretty routine. We can expect it. 40 or 50 years ago, you go out on a date, you sleep with somebody a couple of times and they never talk to you again. You assume they're in the hospital or dead. I mean, it would have been extraordinary. So we have become conditioned to bad behavior. We have become conditioned to being cynical. And what I think hurts the most is when I hear people, they write me these letters and it's like, oh my God, I'm losing hope in love. I'm losing hope in ever finding somebody. I never thought I'd be single this long, but the carnage they've been through, I mean, it's horrible. So there are ways around it, but it's radical. You have to know yourself. You have to speak honestly, but, and you can even do that online. You just have to know what you're looking for.
And the women nowadays have become as sexually superficial in many cases as they've always accused men of being.
Oh, we learned from the best. I have a woman, Scott, I told her this. She came out of a 32-year marriage. She was, she'd be doing the laundry, taking care of her family. Suddenly, she came out of her bag. I said, oh, my God, you scare the hell out of me. Who are you? I said, I've got to put out a public service announcement for these poor guys. I mean, she was like, show me the goods. How long are you good for? This is what I need. I'm like, oh, my God, what happened to you? Now she's settled into a relationship and went back to doing laundry for her guy. But she had a year of kicking up her heels, and there were a lot of guys left in the path going, what happened? She was so nice. And I know her.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because a lot of men historically have been, well, this is a stereotype, been trying to use women for sex. Imagine the surprise when a guy is used for sex for the first time by a woman.
That must be terrifying.
Or delightful. It's surprising. Yes. Well, you know what, Susan? We've been talking about the nuts and bolts of how people make their dating lives fraught for each other and with each other. But what about the technology itself? I mean, it's being used by people who have no interest in dating at all just to get into people's pocketbooks and make their lives miserable. Of course, we've talked about on this show before at length how people get scammed online, but indeed, Susan, it's a whole new level just within the last 3 to 6 months, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I have friends that have come out of a relationship and have not been online for maybe 2 or 3 years. They're terrified. They're like, oh, my God. And they start reading this stuff. I'm like, They're like, how do you know? I said, trust me. It is so sophisticated now because the con gets more sophisticated as people get sophisticated. So do you want to talk about some of the hallmarks? I mean, I'm sure your guys know, but they've gotten some really good ones now that you might not be able to tell.
Well, I think we know about never sending anybody an iTunes gift card.
Oh, well, no money ever.
No money ever from anyone you've ever met. I think people know to avoid women who look too good to be true, who slide into your DMs on Facebook. Yeah. But I know that there's above and beyond that more going on. And let me just tell you this. It has been several years now since I heard about the first time a guy went on an actual real date with a woman, and she was in on the 411 scam originating somewhere like Nigeria. I mean, this was a real woman. And I've also heard about and seen hard evidence of the fact that once someone is susceptible to scamming, they get put in a dark web database. And from there, they use photo recognition technology to find these people whenever they turn up on another app, on another dating site, and then just start scamming them again. So once you've been scammed, you're going to find that the scammers know how to find you. You can't run and hide from them by going to a different platform. That's also several years old. But a couple of the things you mentioned to me were brand new. I mean, the next evolution. So focus on those.
Okay, so I had a friend who went online and she started reading the commentary, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. It looked like love bombing. That's number one. And of course, he wasn't here in the US. And I'm like, okay, do not, do not, do not. If he can't meet you in a week or 10 days. But then he sent her a text in the morning. It was like, good morning. How was your breakfast? I hope that you had a good breakfast because it's the most important meal of the day and sets your mood. I'm like, what the hell? This is ChatGPT.
Oh, wait, now hold on. Before you go any further.
Yeah.
Let's talk about ChatGPT for a second, because I think those of us who are involved in the online world and internet marketing know what ChatGPT is. But this is very nascent technology that is theoretically world changing. So I don't want to pretend like, you've got to know about this or you're hiding under a rock. Although I have to give props to Trey Parker and Matt Stone because they've already caught up with us here. There has already been an entire South Park episode about how ChatGPT is affecting dating. But anyway, Susan, tell us first of all what ChatGPT is and what it represents before we talk about how it's theoretically going to jump out from behind a bush and affect our dating lives. So
yeah, I do want your listeners to be aware that I believe ChatGPT is currently being used because from the readings that I've seen, this is not a human being that knows how to speak like this. So it is an AI software that's open source, and I'm sure any of your listeners who are in college are using it to write their term papers, and some colleges now are allowing it. Some of our big magazine outlets are actually going to be writing articles with ChatGPT, and it's a culmination of all that AI knows on a certain subject. It's quite astounding. But I thought I'd play with it, and I tried a newsletter for New Year's, and they printed it out in a matter of seconds. I'm like, okay, make it warmer. Then a warmer version came out. So you have to be aware. In the old days, we knew it was strange language and the punctuation was a little weird, but they were always, remember, these people were quote unquote foreign, born someplace else. So we could kind of give an allowance for why their language wasn't 100%. But now it can get into very sophisticated conversations with a person who's just a cafe boy in Western Africa who's pretending to be a female. So they can pretty much call up any kind of conversation that you would like to have if they get stuck.
On demand in real time.
Oh, yeah.
It takes seconds.
You all can try it when you stop listening to this show. Just put into your search bar ChatGPT, and it'll come up, and you can go on and try it. Like, tell me about the Napoleonic War. How do you make whiskey? Whatever you want to know.
OpenAI.com, and I'll put that link in the show notes. Probably to the detriment of civilization as we know it, but nevertheless, I feel like we owe those guys that at this point. But yeah, you sign up for a free account. For now, it's free. And then you open up this window and give what's called a prompt, and it will talk about it for you. So yeah, a lot of people online, whether you guys know this or not, are kind of scheming. I don't ever have to be creative again. The robot will do it all for me. But to get to the point of what you're talking about, the game changer here relative to ChatGPT in the dating universe is it speaks perfect English. So the 411 scammers, the Russian guys pretending to be women, even if you think you're really slick and can figure out what broken English looks like and even kind of place it geographically to Russia or Western Africa, those days are gone. There's not going to be any way to differentiate ChatGPT from a real American human being anymore. Unless, of course, you get to the point where you're suspicious that their English and their grammar is too good, which I imagine could happen. But, am I onto something there? Is that what's going on here?
Well, yes. And when you say the dating world is out to get you, remember, AI is evolutionary. It learns from usage. So it's only going to get better and better and better. And that's the frightening thing. Well,
and the end of the world is near. This is crazy.
Well, I think we're going to be okay for a while, but still, I know. All these things have cropped up because people don't know how to do something the right way. They don't know how to do. Nobody was given them the proper education. So these are all workarounds.
Well, I guess the best place to go from here before we close the show, Susan, is what are we to do? What's a guy to do? How can we fight this effectively? How can we get on the right track and, I don't know, defeat the dating world in spite of itself and actually start succeeding with real, actual human red-blooded women again. What are your points on that? What are your tips?
I would do everything that edifies you as a person and learn to speak. Don't be afraid to have a conversation like a normal person. And I mean, it may sound so old school, but it's, in real life is a wonderful place to meet people. I can't tell you how many stories I've got of a guy that picked up a woman in a drugstore. Like, it was day game, but he didn't really do PUA. He just saw this gorgeous woman looking at something on a counter and grabbed something next to it and said, "Is this good? I'm sorry to bother you." I don't know whether he picked up hand lotion or something. Started the conversation. They've been together over 25 years. And
that was 25 years ago.
Yeah. And
well, I mean, okay, so let me go ahead and put a little bit of inflection on this.
Okay.
I've been shouted down by my peers in this space, dating coaches, other dating coaches, for what I'm about to say.
Okay.
I've been told I'm out of touch, I'm too old, I need to get out there and date again, as if, because I'm just missing out on reality. And yet, Susan, like you, I'm immersed with real, actual guys and women who are trying to date all day long. My head is really firmly wrapped around this, I believe. But I have been shouted down for saying the new paradigm is the old paradigm.
Well, it is.
Go out and meet freaking people in real life, because first of all, they're starving for it. And second of all, if you can get past that initial 2 or 3 seconds of shock where they look at you like, oh my goodness, I'm 30 years old and I still think that it's crazy to talk to strangers. And you can just kind of get past that social cue of someone being surprised as opposed to being disgusted, and just talk to them, power through it for a mere 3 to 5 seconds, Susan, and say, hey, it's okay. I just wanted to say hello. You'll watch a person go, oh, well, you know what? This is exactly what I've been starving for. And they'll say hello back. And the next thing you know, you're off and running, because people are starving for real world interaction. And if you're the one who knows how to initiate it, Susan, I think especially as a man, you win. You're the champion. You're the grand champion nowadays.
Well, I have a couple tricks. Do you have time for me to help your listeners feel comfortable doing so, having this conversation?
As long as you use a different word other than tricks.
Techniques.
There you go.
A hack.
There you go.
If you look at this person as a romantic prospect, you could be setting a very high stake for yourself, and it could be high pressure. If you just erase that in your mind and think, this is another human being, this is like my Aunt Sally, this is like my neighbor down the street, how would I respond to them in this circumstance? Oftentimes taking it human to human will get rid of the nerves. And 2, I think if you can go to a place where whatever the activity is something you already know and like, and it feels resonant for you, that means that everybody there is kind of on the same page. So if you like gaming, or if you like, I don't know, dog shows, whatever you like, if you go there, you're going to find somebody with whom you have a common interest. And then it makes the conversation so much easier. And you're right. And a third thing, the more you do this, practice gives you confidence. We're never confident doing something the first time, ever. But the more you do the same thing, the more confident you get, and then the easier it gets. And you're right, Scott, people would be delighted to have you speak to them.
That seems so far away for a lot of guys. And the same guys for whom that would seem far away, Susan, are often the same guys who come to me and go, I can't get any women to go out with me. And I'll always invariably ask them, well, how many women have you asked out? And go, none.
Or how many women have you been in conversation with, just to get to know if you like them? I mean, just because she's a woman and she's cute, maybe she's not right for you, but
right, exactly.
You just keep practicing. I tell guys to start with, listen, I know you've got your own techniques, but I tell some of my guys, they're so boxed up. And I say, okay, next time you go to the grocery store, I want you to pick something that does not scare you. Grandma, some grandma lady, and just say, hi, I'm sorry to bother you. Is this, like, I don't know how to pick out an eggplant. Can you help me? Or what is ripe here? And start to then pick somebody a little bit younger and a little bit younger until you're finally comfortable just saying anything to somebody within the possibility of somebody you'd want to date, just to get them going.
Now, see, my go-to in that context is always avocados, not eggplants.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Whatever you want.
No, you and I are absolutely on the same
wavelength. It might be kind of improper. You're holding up a big eggplant. Hey, can you tell me what I can do with this? They might go, no.
Yeah, I thought you were fluent in emojis there.
Yeah, I just thought about that after I said it. But
come on now. You got to speak emoji here. The eggplants are off the table.
Like a melon or something. Yeah.
Melons are off the table too.
Oh.
Nice melon.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, geez.
Yeah,
well.
That's like the Leslie Nielsen looking up the ladder. Nice beaver. Nice melons. Yeah, guys, go up to the cantaloupe section, camp out next to a pretty girl and go, nice melons, huh? Yeah.
You'll be fine.
Said nobody ever who succeeded. Yeah. Although, if you find the woman who has that kind of sense of humor and you're being authentic, run with it. I love everything you just said. And I'll tell you, gentlemen, it is so true that if you go out there and get out of your comfort familiarity zone and start talking to women. You hear a lot nowadays, guys, about being masculine involves doing hard things. And, we said this a couple episodes ago or a few episodes ago, depending on how the backlog sorted itself out, that chopping wood and doing the Tough Mudder and running a marathon. I mean, okay, that's all hard, right? But the mental toughness involves doing hard things too, right? And so if you are scared of talking to women, talking to female human beings, you can do it just like Susan said, gentlemen. You can start off with women you're not necessarily attracted to and then work from there just to kind of get your legs under you and get some reps. And if it's hard, that's a good thing. If it's difficult for you, then you're growing as a man. But, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to find that women aren't out to get you. Even if the dating world is out to get you and, ChatGPT wants to ruin your life and take your money or whatever. Out here in the real world, women are still women, men are still men. And Susan, we didn't traipse into this zone, but even with all the pressure against the nuclear family and masculinity and femininity and men and women being in partnership, I tell you what, heterosexual procreation is a monolith that will never be conquered by any energy we can muster as mere humans. It is the secret of the universe. Women still like men, men still like women. Guys, just give it a shot. That's, I think, the mic drop here. Gentlemen, her name is Susan Winter. She's got a wonderful website where she's just got this wealth of really smart articles. And if you want the woman's point of view on just about anything dating, sex, relationship related, I can't recommend Susan enough. She and I have known each other probably 10 years now, and she's consistently excellent. One thing that we probably should mention is that you are really good at younger men dating older women and navigating those relationships. So I wanted to give a shout out to that. All of that and more is there for you when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/winter. Just like the season. Thank you so much, Susan. This has been a fantastic conversation. We included so much here, and I hope the guys don't necessarily feel like they've drank from a fire hose here, but that they're a little more well-equipped to go navigate a dating world and, I don't know, somehow feel better about it, right?
Absolutely. There is a healthy, happy workaround to all the nonsense. Thank you so much, Scott. I always love talking to you, and I love your common sense and just the way you present everything. So thank you so much for your time today.
Wow, you sound like my wife. I'm not exactly kidding, even though that's funny. But thank you, Susan. You're a gem, and we really appreciate you around here and hope you'll come back soon.
Thank you, Scott.
And guys, be sure to go to mountaintoppodcast.com, visit our sponsors, which include Jocko Willink's company Origin in Maine, Hero Soap, and the guys over at Keyport. When you partake of any of those products, please use the code MOUNTAIN10 to get yourself an extra 10% off. Guys, we're well into the year here. Spring is coming. What are you going to do to fill your life with great women? I know this episode hit a lot of you guys where it hurts. It's easy to take the information from this particular episode and be even more pessimistic. Well, here's my challenge I'm going to throw down for you. Take this information, consider it power, and go use it to change the world, brighten a beautiful woman's day, and you know what? Invite her out. See how that works for you. And if you feel like you'd love to have me standing by your side as your personal trainer in this stuff, Go to mountaintoppodcast.com, get on my calendar. The first 25 minutes is free, and you'll find I'm exactly who you suspect I'm going to be. I'm a real guy who lives a real life with a real solid, wonderful woman by my side. All of that is there for you and much more at mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.